This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, has inaugurated the construction of the seawater desalination plant Fouka 2 in Tipaza province, expressing satisfaction at the work done so far. And the urban peace meeting in Cairo have firmly and strongly rejected as ethnic cleansing the displacement of the Palestinian people, considering its resettlement initiative as a crime against humanity. And the president of the Mexican Senate, Fernandez Noronha, has reaffirmed his solidarity and support for the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. NGOs and trade unions have called for a suspension of partnership agreement concluded between the EU and Israel, whom they blame for serious human rights violations. And those were the major developments. I'm Assia Bakar. Good afternoon. The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has inaugurated the construction of the seawater desalination plant Fouka 2 in Tipaza province, expressing satisfaction at the progress made so far. Mariam Barshi has the details.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, said with each step taken, Algeria is getting closer to the stage of emerging countries, hailing the work achieved by workers, technicians, engineers and managers who contributed to this project, stressing that this major achievement is a source of pride.
شكر كل من قاموا بهذا المشروع وكل من شاركوا في هذا الإنجاز الضخم، إنجاز الجزائر المنتصرة، بالأخص من عمال ومهندسين ومسيرين بصفة عامة. كما أشكر القطاعين، قطاع الطاقة وقطاع الري وصناعة بالطبع، يعني على هذا الإنجاز الضخم هذا. الحمد لله وين وصلنا، كما قلتها سابقا، في كل خطوة تخطوها الجزائر اليوم أنا نقترب شيئا فشيئا من ولوج إلى ساحة الدول الناشئة بفضل الرجال والنساء اللي قائمين برفع التحديات في كل قطاعات.
The President said the plant will allow the provision of 300,000 cubic meters of water daily, which means 300 million liters per day, using not only desalination techniques, but other techniques that allow the preservation of agricultural lands by using sea areas.
300,000 متر مكعب يوميا، يعني 300 مليون لتر يوميا، بربح أراضي في البحر. ما فيش الا التقنيه نتاع التحليه، في كذلك تقنيات اخرى ما دام المساحه كانت ضيقه وباش ما نمسش المساحات الفلاحيه اضطروا باش يربحوا مساحات في البحر، وهذا يعني يشير الى احترام اولا الاراضي الفلاحيه، احترام الاراضي الخصبه، وفي نفس الوقت تلبيه حاجيات المواطن.
The President said the people want Algeria to take up challenges by drawing inspiration from the generation of November 1st, 1954, which succeeded in driving the colonial Fifth World Power from Algerian lands with hunting rifles. The President of the Republic also mentioned similar projects carried out in the provinces of Boumerdesp, Djaya Tarif, as well as the Cap Blanc seawater desalination plant that he inaugurated last Thursday in Oran. The President said thanks to such projects, the country has managed to meet the needs in terms of drinking water. President Tebboune said such projects reflect invaluable efforts, particularly in this situation, as the Maghreb region is heading towards a water shortage due to the low rainfall. Thus, the President said the Algerian state considered the desalination of seawater 3 years ago and found a wise solution, promising to find adequate solutions for the rest of the country's region.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the Minister Delegate to the Minister of National Defense, Army Chief of Staff, Army General Said Chengriha, has on behalf of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, supervised the installation ceremony of General Zubir Awila as Commander of the Air Force in replacement of General Mahmoud Laraba. Mariam Barshigan.
Army General Said Chengriha met with the leadership officials and employees of the Air Force Command and delivered a guiding speech broadcast to all its units via video conferencing technology. Army General Said Chingriha praised the achievements that the Algerian diplomacy continues to achieve under the wise leadership of the President of the Republic at the international and regional levels. He added that military diplomacy has witnessed a rapid dynamism embodied by receiving many high-level foreign military delegations and paying visits to several countries.
أود بهذه المناسبة الإشادة والتنويه.
I would like to highlight and emphasize the recent impetus of our diplomacy in line with the firm instructions of the President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense. This diplomacy has succeeded in consolidating Algeria's role at the international and continental level through the outstanding activities of our country within the framework of the United Nations Security Council in its capacity as a non-permanent member, and also by increasing its representation at the level of the bodies and mechanisms of the African Union, in line with the importance that Algeria attaches to its African dimension.
لعمقها الإفريقي.
He said that this impulse comes within the framework of the Army's relentless efforts to strengthen the bonds of bilateral and multilateral military cooperation with friendly armies to enable us to strengthen our defense tools and allow them to meet the security challenges faced by our country and its winning bets in light of the geopolitical changes witnessed by our region.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and entrusted by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Minister of War Veterans, Laider Biga, took part in Managua, Nicaragua, in the swearing-in ceremony of the Commander-in-Chief of the Nicaraguan Army, General Julio Cesar Aviles. The ceremony was presided over by the President of the Republic of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, and the Co-President, Rosario Murillo. On the occasion, Mr. Biga congratulated the Commander-in-Chief of the Nicaraguan Army, stressing that Algeria's participation in the ceremony reflects the quality of historic relations linking the two countries. And a delegation from the Algeria-Serbia Parliamentary Friendship Group at the National People's Army is on an official visit to the Republic of Serbia to strengthen parliamentary relations between the two countries. The visit, which comes at the invitation of the chairman of the Serbia-Algeria Parliamentary Friendship Group, Mr. Goran Rakik, aims to strengthen parliamentary relations between the two countries and to examine ways of cooperation in several fields. You're still listening to our news bulletin, and the members of the Arab Parliament and speakers of Arab assemblies and parliaments have firmly and strongly rejected as ethnic cleansing the displacement of Palestinian people, considering any resettlement initiative as a crime against humanity.
Algeria, whose name I'm honored to represent as President of the Arab Interparliamentary Union, reaffirms its unwavering commitment to supporting any sincere effort that strengthens Arab unity and solidarity and achieves unity of ranks. Algeria has always been at the forefront of nations supporting the Palestinian cause, sparing no effort in defending the right of the Palestinian people, whether at the political or diplomatic level. It continues to support all initiatives aimed at enhancing Arab parliamentary cooperation and fostering joint Arab solidarity to address current challenges and strengthen the presence of Arab parliaments on the international stage. We remain fully prepared to work and intensify efforts with all Arab parliaments to ensure the achievement of this conference's objectives and translate them into tangible reality.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and 39 minutes Algeria's time. That was the statement of the Speaker of the People's National Assembly and of Arab Parliament, Brahim Boughali, who reiterated Algeria's unswerving support with the Palestinian issue. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and in a final communique issued at the end of their 7th session, the Arab MPs ruled out the idea of resettling the Palestinian people, rejecting the proposal as a blatant violation of the legitimate rights of the Palestinians and international law. They denounced the move in all its forms, including the statements made by U.S. President Donald Trump as running counter all charters and international conventions, reiterating their refusal of Israel's annexation plans of the West Bank. Addressing the meeting, as we said, Brahim Boughali reiterated Algeria's unswerving support with the Palestinian cause.
نحن نستنكر بشدة قرار الاحتلال تأجيل.
We strongly condemn the occupation's decision to postpone the release of Palestinian prisoners. This decision once again reveals the occupation's dilatory maneuvers and its refusal to abide by its commitments. The occupation claims that the handover ceremonies are humiliating for the prisoners, an utterly false claim and a flimsy pretext aimed at failing to fulfill its obligations under the agreement. This decision reflects Netanyahu's deliberate intent to obstruct the agreement, constituting a clear violation of its terms and further providing the occupation's unreliability in fulfilling its commitments. We are in contact with mediators and call on the international community to assume its responsibility and exert pressure on the occupation to implement the agreement and release the prisoners without any delay. The occupation has no choice but to comply with what has been agreed upon. Otherwise, it will find neither a mediator nor a guarantor for any further agreement, and it will bear the consequences of this stance regarding the remaining provisions of the current agreement, as well as any potential future commitments or the completion of this agreement.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and as the Israeli army pursued its acts of aggression against the West Bank town of Jenin for more than 1 month, over 200 NGOs and trade unions have called for a suspension of partnership agreement concluded between the EU and Israel, whom they blame for serious violations of human rights. The request was backed by over 250 European parliamentarians who relied on Article 2 of the partnership agreement, which sets the respect of international law and human rights as key principles. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, the spokesman for the President of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ms. Tina Salma, has announced that the President has decided to form a government of national unity and to make changes within his coalition of political parties.
The president of the DRC said that he's certainly moving towards a Congolese government of national unity and changes within the leadership of the Sacred Union of the Nation, the ruling parliamentary coalition. The meeting focused mainly on the security situation marked by advances of the March 23 movement, which has claimed control of several strategic towns, including Goma and Bukavu, the provincial capitals of North and South Kivu, respectively. The current government was formed last June, following Mr. Tshisekedi's re-election in the December 2023 presidential election. Let's recall that the UN Security Council has, for the first time ever, condemned Rwanda for its support to the offensive launched by the so-called M23 rebel group against the eastern part of the DRC, urging for an immediate withdrawal of its troops from the area.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the president of the Mexican Senate, Gerardo Fernandez Noroña, has reaffirmed his solidarity and support for the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic in his speech to the 43rd Ordinary Meeting of the Forum of Legislative Authorities of Central America, the Caribbean and Mexico, held in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. The president of the Mexican Senate stated that to clearly and frankly express his solidarity and support for the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. The president of the Mexican Senate reiterated Mexico's historic position in favor of the inalienable right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination, stressing that the sovereignty of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic is fundamental principle of Mexican foreign policy. Let's recall that Mexico has always been a defender of the principles of self-determination and the sovereignty of and independence of peoples. You still listen to Radio Algeria International, and that's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to the international event of the week.
The international event of the week.
The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met this week in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, as part of negotiations aimed at giving new impetus to the U.S.-Russian relations. The negotiations were also seeking common ground on several pressing issues, notably security and the conflict in Ukraine. The meeting held between the two top officials, which was described as the most extensive high-level engagement held between the two countries, came at a pivotal moment as tensions between the two superpowers continue to impact global stability. Asked on whether the Riyadh meeting marks a shift in how both countries approach one another, our California-based political analyst Hamoud Salhi had this to say.
This is a fundamental shift in U.S.-Russia relations. The United States shifted its position from considering Russia a strategic enemy, as it was under former President Joe Biden, to a partner. Less than a month ago, or less than a month since he took power, President Donald Trump initiated a phone call with the Russian leader, sending a clear and strong signal that the United States is ready to resume relations with Russia, a move that shocked the European, as the US and Europe worked together previously to isolate the Russian leader. Additionally, this overture implies that the United States now recognizes Russia's right to protect its national border, a shift from its earlier position, and accordingly, it recognizes its opposition to the expansion of NATO to include Ukraine as a member. This is a fundamental and remarkable change in policy. Along with this, the Russian also, President Trump also made it clear that he's no longer interested in supporting, providing assistance to the Ukrainians. And more so, he believed, or he stated, that the Ukraine is at fault for starting the war, and that the Ukrainian president later on February 18th, for example, he described the Ukrainian leaders as a dictator. All this kind of discussion, this kind of position, puts the United States very close to the Russians, and the Russians also have come to the realization that this is a great opportunity to get back the United States on its side and work with the new leadership in Washington to find a resolution of the Ukrainian position that would accept the status quo and in line with the conditions that have for years now indicated that Ukraine has to be neutral, demilitarized and not pose any serious threat to Russia. And that is in line with what it seems in line with the position of the current president in the United States.
The US and Russian top diplomats meeting this week in Riyadh announced that the US and Russia had agreed to set up a high-level team entrusted with setting the conditions for peace talks to end the conflict in Ukraine. Both sides say they are committed to work together as part of a settlement of the Ukrainian issue, which has so far been a major point of contention between the US and Russia. Addressing newsmen following the Riyadh meeting, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio affirmed that ending the conflict in Ukraine could open up to the US and Russia partnership opportunities on areas of mutual interest. Asked if the Riyadh meeting marked a U-turn in the US-Russian relationship, which has been marked by decades of competition, conflict and cautious cooperation, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi had the following.
Indeed, it marks a remarkable, fundamental change in U.S.-Russia relationship. This means, as several noted speakers and experts noted, an abandonment by the U.S. of the Biden administration position that stood firm with the Ukraine, and also with Europe that believed that an expansion of the NATO to include Ukraine would protect its national interest. Furthermore, it is a U-turn in the position in terms of the United States previously guaranteeing the security of Ukraine by providing it with the military assistance it needed or that the Ukrainian wanted the United States to provide with them. And that guarantee also was to Europe, that the United States remains their biggest ally, and they will do all they can to guarantee their security. With this position, it is clear that the United States no longer sees that. It is, in fact, as Secretary of Defense clearly stated, there are no American guarantees. Those guarantees have to come from Europe, and this is why the United States is pushing also Europe to pay more of its dues, up from the 2% to 5% of GDP to NATO, and a clear signal again that the United States wants to move away from providing the military assistance, the cost that it sees are unnecessary and a burden on the American society or taxpayers, and preferably. So in many ways, we are seeing a major change in U.S.-Russian relation and a major, perhaps, departure from what Europe expected of the United States and what the alliance, U.S.-Europe relations, was all about.
The Russian presidency spokesman announced that President Putin and President Trump could meet as early as this month, as earlier stated by the American president, who suggested that his meeting with the Russian president might take place by the end of this month. Prior to this week's US-Russian discussions held in Riyadh, US President Trump has had a phone conversation with Russian President Putin on how to move forward towards a peaceful settlement of the Ukrainian issue. He described his conversation with President Putin as lengthy and highly productive, as it focused on a range of issues including the Middle East, energy, as well as artificial intelligence. Asked on whether President Trump is seeking to forge a rapprochement with his Russian counterpart in an attempt to redefine his country's post-World War II alliances, our political analyst Hamoud Salhi commented the issue.
There are broader consequences for this rapprochement. While on the surface it appears that this move is a clear, clever move by President Trump at the expense of Europe and a United States alliance with the continent. However, it could also be a way for Trump to maneuver his way and attempt to weaken the Russian-Chinese relations that have grown over the years to be a credible challenge to the United States. In this matter, it is noteworthy that the Trump administration's position on the Ukraine is similar to that of China, in that both countries view the resolution of this conflict through negotiation with Russia, that Russia is the key player in resolving this problem. The difference, however, President Donald Trump has gone further by excluding the European and Ukrainians from the negotiations, a move that the Chinese welcomed. The Chinese, who are notorious for what some label as strategic patience, have welcomed the American-Russian new relations. and for good reason from their perspective, a position that could put the American president from the Russian side and from some analysts in a weakened position, because it could give Russia leverage by aligning itself with China and be in a better position to further enhance its bargaining position with the Trump administration, not just in the Ukraine, but in other parts of the world. It could be a game of chess that could leave President Donald Trump with a weaker deal with Russia and in a weaker position in Europe, being isolated and being perceived as the American president who lost Ukraine to Russia and Europe to Russia as well. Chinese specialists in this matter who work on Russia-US relations note that China should remain or is remaining cautious of Russia-US close partnership and argue at the same time that this relationship, this so-called, according to them, rapprochement, is overly exaggerated because of deep historical mistrust that exists between Russia and the United States. Hence, adding credence to the notion that President Trump's attempt to redefine U.S. alliances may backfire, and as it would put the United States in a weaker position than it would have hoped for, and specifically in a weaker position than it was before President Donald Trump began this initiative.
The US-Russian discussions held this week one widely seen as the most extensive negotiations held between the two countries since the conflict broke out in Ukraine more than 3 years ago.
And that was the international event of the week. And as we're celebrating today the National Day of the Kasbah, I invite you to listen to this program compiled and presented by Jamal Salmani about the Kasbah of Algiers. I'll meet you again tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Algiers time for a fresh news edition.
وانا وليدها واللي صار يصير واللي صار يصير حياة شبابين في دارها ما ننساش الخير ما ننساش.
The Kasbah is a unique kind of Medina or Islamic city. It stands in one of the finest coastal sites on the Mediterranean, overlooking the islands, where a Carthaginian trading post was established in the 4th century before Christ. There are the remains of the citadel, old mosques and Ottoman-style palaces, as well as the remains of a traditional urban structure associated with a deep-rooted sense of community. The Kasbah of Algiers is an outstanding example of a historic Maghreb city having had extensive influence on town planning in the western part of the Mediterranean and sub-Saharan Africa. Indeed, located on the Mediterranean coast, the site was inhabited at least from the 6th century BC, when a Phoenician trading post was established in there. The term Kasbah, that originally designated the highest point of the Medina during the Zirid area, today applies to the ensemble of the old town of El Jazair, within the boundaries marked by the ramparts and built at the end of the 16th century, dating back to the Ottoman period. In this living environment where nearly 50,000 people reside, very interesting traditional houses, palaces, hammams, mosques and various souks are still conserved, the urban form of which bears witness of an effect of stratification of several styles in a complex and original system that has adapted remarkably well to a very hilly and uneven side. The Kasbah of Algiers has exercised considerable influence on architecture and town planning in North Africa, Andalusia, and in sub-Saharan Africa during the 16th and 17th century. These exchanges are illustrated in the specific character of its houses and the density of its urban stratification, a model of human settlement where the ancestral lifestyle and Muslim customs have blended with other types of traditions.
بروح رمضان ونسمات شهر الخير والبركات، إذاعة الجزائر الدولية تقدم لكم حلة من البرامج المواكبة للمناسبة،
برامج جديدة